Hello and welcome back, coin collectors, to another all change review. Now this week we're going to do something a little different, and we're actually going to look at the different portraits of Queen Elizabeth II that's appeared on money in the period of her reign. I thought it was appropriate this week, with her becoming the longest serving British monarch on the 9th of September. And there's been 5 of them over the years, and 4 of these are actually currently in circulation. So let's get started. Queen Elizabeth II, or to give her full UK title, Her Majesty Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and her other realms and territories, Queen and Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith. Bit of a mouthful. Was coronated on the 2nd of June 1953. And this same year saw the first coin issued with her portrait, and I have an example of just here on a £0.5 crown coin. Nice big coin, this one. So I'm not going to pop up the stats for each coin, because we've got 5 different ones as we go through, and we'll come back to that when we actually look at these coins itself. So this portrait here was done by Mary Gillick. And the portrait's actually been described as fresh, evocative, beautiful, and reflecting the optimistic mood of the nation, a sort of greeting a new era after coming out the horrificness that is the Second World War. As you can see here, it's quite a plain design, and the Queen is actually just wearing a wreath in it as well. Now this design is the only one not still in circulation. It stopped being used when decimalisation came in around 1968 to 71, but it is still used on Maundy money as well. Also, I'm just going to point out the Latin that we have around here. As you can see, we've got, and I can't pronounce Latin properly, but then no one actually knows how it was pronounced, so I might be getting it right. De Gratia Regina, which stands for by the grace of God and Queen. And on other coins we actually have FD, or Fid Def, which stands for Fidi Defensa, meaning Defender of the Faith. Which also reflects her position as Supreme Governor of the Church of England, which is quite an impressive title, or quite an impressive sounding title. So, the process of decimalisation started in 1968, and that brings us on to the second portrait. So I'm going to move this one back, keep an eye on it guys, and bring it in here. Da, da, da. Now this second portrait of the Queen was done by Arnold Mackin, and I have it here on an old style 50p, and this is actually the same 50p we used in the first review. The actual portrait was first approved back in 1964, 4 years before it even came in. And as you can see here, the wreath has now been replaced by the tiara, which the Queen was given as a wedding present by her grandmother, Queen Mary. And a version of this portrait is what's been definitively used on postage stamps since 1967. So as a result, there's been 320 billion copies of it printed, making it possibly the most reproduced image in the history of the world. So with that in mind, I'm going to knock it over, I'm going to pick it back up, and I'm going to move it back, as then we will move on to 1985 and the third portrait. Let's line these up, and there we go. Now the third portrait was done by Raphael Macluf, and please forgive me pronunciation on that one. And I have it here, and this is actually a Australian dollar. I just thought I'd mix it up a bit with the coins that we're using, but also to show that these same portraits are used on coinage all over the world, in the Commonwealths, and a couple that aren't Commonwealths anymore as well. As you can see here, this time she's wearing the royal diadem, which is what she also wears on the state opening of Parliament as well. Now, some critics and people did accuse Raphael of making the Queen look flatteringly young, but his response to them was his intention was to create a symbol that was regal and ageless. But also, if you can just make it out at the very base of her neck, you can see the initials RDM, the D being for David, and they didn't want to just put RM in case people thought it was for the Royal Mint. So that brings us on to our fourth coin. Now this is probably the most common one that's actually in circulation at the moment, by Ian Rank-Broadley. It was minted in 1997 first on the £2 coins, but due to an issue with vending machines it didn't actually get officially brought out until 1998. And strangely, where old Raphael got criticised for making the Queen too young, Ian got criticised for making the Queen look too old, which proves you can never please everyone. But his comment to the critics was, "There's no need to disguise the matureness of the Queen's years, and no need to flatter her. She's a 70-year-old woman with poise and bearing." Which, yeah, fair enough. So, he was also conscious that the coins were getting smaller. This was when the new 50p, the 50p had already shrunk, but also the 5p's and 10p's had also gone down in size as well. So to compensate for this, he made the image as large as possible in the area he had to work with. So then that brings us up to date. And that brings us on to the latest portrait by Jodie Clark. Let me get that into shot. Now this was released this year, 2015, and I have it here on a 1p piece. The way it was chosen, Jodie Clark, with along with other number of leading sculptors and members of the Royal Mint design team, were asked to submit anonymous portraits in the competition for the new design. In an interview with him, actually, you can hear on the Royal Mint YouTube page, he said he thought the Queen hadn't aged much since the last one was minted, so he decided to concentrate more on the regalia that she was wearing, and as you can see, she now has the diadem crown back on, which she was also coronated in, and there's a slight change to the earrings as well. He says he wanted to catch the symbol of the Queen rather than just the person who she is. And that is the 5 portraits of the Queen. Now the Royal Mint has announced it is going to release a special commemorative coin, a £20 coin, which will have all the portraits of the Queen laid out on the front of it, with Jodie Clark's portrait on the back. And that's to commemorate her being the longest reigning British monarch. So, what do you think of the latest design? And actually, do you have a favourite out of all of these designs? Let me know in the comments section below, and if there's any ways you think I should improve this, make it more stand out and jazzy, also let me know. But that brings us to the end of the review. So, thank you for watching, and until next time, keep collecting. Bye.